Unicode gets a
I
bit
know
weird.
a lot about emoji that I don't need to know about emoji. Uh,
Right. Because
Writing
of
game engines is fun.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I've seen how emojis kind of break from time to time, just in a normal terminal that's like intended to be a terminal. So I guess for anyone who's not aware, just give a brief explanation on your game, and then we can go into some of like you'll bring emoji stuff there. But anything else you want to get into with that?
Okay, so all the self-hosting stuff is for a game called Socially Distant that
Mm,
I've been working on well, since COVID-19
mm,
happened. Um, and it's a hacking game where the story is kind of being revamped, so I'm not gonna actually go too far into it. But basically, you
you are
are an
hacker man.
employee for a company, and you're a hacker man, and you're going on this investigation. I'm not pitching the game too well because it's kind of in limbo right now. We're working on it, and I don't want to make promises right now, but um, it has a desktop environment built into it that's very Linuxy, and it has a terminal. And the big part of it is that it's in a custom game engine that I wrote for it. So I wrote the entire UI system for it. I wrote the rendering code. I wrote the window management, and I wrote the text rendering. And I added emoji support to the game. Now, you mentioned Terminal, but I haven't actually gotten it working in Terminal yet. Um, I've gotten it working everywhere else where the game can display text, but not Terminal, because Terminal's Terminal.
Right.
Um, but emoji on a website, uh, if you have a competent browser, it's just theoretically going to work. Um, if you go to GitLab or GitHub and you post an issue or a comment or something like that, and you use an emoji, it's gonna work.
Sure.
Um,
Usually.
in a desktop application, not always, because emoji, they are standardized, but what isn't standardized is those little shortcodes. They're
Mm.
called that when you type in a colon and you type the word heart and then another colon, and a heart appears in the message. That
Mm.
is not standardized. That is completely dependent on the specific service you're using.
Yeah,
So
I've got
if you're writing a desktop app, you need to come up with those yourself
I've got
or find a
Emojipedia.
standard.
I've got Emojipedia open right now. The example they have here for shortcodes is on GitHub, it's policewoman. On Emojipedia, it's woman underscore police underscore officer. On Slack, it's female dash police officer. Not underscore.
Yeah,
They decided to be different.
yeah. So that's the shortcodes.
Mm.
Now that's relatively easy to figure out. I just went to the GitHub
Yeah,
API.
just go to
They
GitHub.
have an API that returns like a JSON object of every shortcode that their system supports, and then what Unicode values they map to. So I
Mm.
took that, turned it into C#, and that became a 4,000 line long file in my source tree.
Yeah, I've got the. I think this is a full list. Someone decided to put a cheat sheet together. Um,
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Also, Unicode is
So
a evolving standard, so you might get more emoji.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I have this lookup table of every single emoji there is, except for the ones that didn't have Unicode code points attached to them for some reason, or didn't have shortcodes attached to them for some reason, because GitHub is weird. So that is only part of the problem. Parsing those shortcodes, looking them up to get their code point values, that's relatively easy. I've written a few programming language interpreters for languages I've invented, so I know what I'm doing. Rendering the emoji. Okay, first things first. C# character encoding. UTF-16. It's not UTF-8, it's UTF-16. A character is 16 bits, 2 bytes. String encoding in C# is also UTF-16.
Okay.
So, storing a Unicode code point for an emoji is not possible in a string, because the \U hexadecimal escape sequence can only accept 2 bytes of data,
Okay.
not the 4 that you need for an emoji. Um, so somehow I needed to be able to turn strings into UTF-32. Luckily, .NET 8 and .NET 9 have a method to do this, but it is probably not as efficient as I would need in a game engine, so it's not particularly ideal. So I had to do some of the parsing myself. That's fine. Whatever. Now we get to the text rendering part. So you know how on an Arch Linux system, if you don't install an emoji font, all the emoji look like squares?
Sure.
Because you don't have an emoji font. You need to install an emoji font. Now in a game engine, you also need an emoji font. But you're very limited on what emoji font you're able to use because of performance and licensing. Now I believe I'm good to go as far as the emoji font that I picked.
Do you know
It
what
is
it is?
actually it's based on Tweemoji, but it's modified for performance. And what I wanted is I wanted color emoji, which complicates the problem. And I wanted an up-to-date font that has most of the modern emoji. And I was able to get that. And the problem is fonts and color glyphs are not exactly sane because there are so many different ways to do color in a font. And I'm using FreeType, which doesn't support all of them. So, FreeType can handle your standard bitmap raster glyphs from 1974. That's fine. It handles those. It can handle single color vector glyphs, which is what most fonts are nowadays. That's what TrueType fonts mostly are. And it'll rasterize them out into a bitmap that you can then copy into your texture on the graphics card. That's easy enough. Color. There are two standards. There's SVG, and then there's COLR.
Okay.
SVG is fucking slow. Pardon my French. It took at least 2 minutes to render a single emoji at 12-point font in the game engine. Because there are no SVG renderers for .NET that run in .NET and aren't platform specific. And by platform specific, I mean Windows.
Right.
I'm on Linux. I can't use those. So, rendering an SVG out, not a viable process. I do cache the text, but it's got to be rendered first. I don't want the game to hang for a minute during that first cold run. No thanks. That's for one emoji. Imagine having to preload every single one of them just in case one of them might be used by a mod. No way. So not happening. Now, COLR is, first of all, it works fine in FreeType, but you have to write specific code to be able to take the data out of the font and get it into your texture. It's a bit more complicated, but I was able to figure it out. The problem is there aren't many emoji fonts that use that format because they all are expected to be used on the web and therefore are SVG fonts.
Is it
I'm
reasonable
annoyed
to
by the web
convert
now.
between the two?
I'm sure it's possible, but I don't know about the legality of doing so.
Sure.
And I just don't want to mess with it because this is a commercial game. I want to make sure my fonts are licensed properly. So, I'm not a lawyer. I just don't want to deal with that. I want to. If someone else has turned an open source emoji pack into the right font that I need and it's under OFL and under the right license, I'm going to use that. It just makes the life easier. But you have to find that font, and luckily I was able to. But, my god, that was a nightmare. And now I have the ability to render cute little red foxes in the user interface. Oh.
I guess this might be a big part of the reason why a lot of games just don't bother with it. And if they're going to use something emoji-like, they'll just go with emoticons because that's much easier. Because you're already doing that anyway. You're already dealing with these characters, so it's fine. No issue.
And that reminds me, there is another emoji-like system in Unicode.
Okay.
It's called the private use uh, something or other. Unicode is kind of hard to learn and hard to remember,
The private
but
use
there's like
area.
this private use area, whatever. It's this upper area in the spec where fonts can just put whatever the fuck they want.
Yep. Yep.
So you're using material design icons, that's where they're gonna put them.
Mm-hmm.
If you're using another icon pack, that's where you're gonna put them. And obviously, being that this is an operating system environment that you play the game through, I do need these kinds of icons and I need them to scale. So toolbars, for example, they need your open and save icons, or if you're in the browser, you need a back and a forward button. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an artist and I'm also blind, so I'm just gonna use an icon font for that. And maybe down the line I can get someone to, you know, replace those icons with something a bit better for the game.
I would
But
assume the nerd fonts probably also use that area for storing their glyphs. I'm not certain though.
I would imagine so as well. But I haven't looked into nerd fonts. I
Mhm.
probably should for the terminal, just for flair, but not yet. But
More
yeah,
fun, more
I
pain.
this is these icon fonts are why I ultimately decided to implement emoji into the game, and I'm telling this story in reverse because I thought that it would be easy. It
Okay.
was not easy. Icon fonts are easy. They're just fonts with different glyphs in the private use area, and then if your language supports Unicode, which any language built within the past 30 years will hopefully support, you can represent those icons properly, and it'll just work, and you'll get your monochromatic scalable icons that you would expect on the internet for flat design, and it all works. And that is until you use material design icons and you make a game about COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
That gets you flagged as a password stealer in Windows Defender.
Okay.
I'm serious. I needed to get help from the John Hammond community to figure this one out and figure out what was flagging it. I actually had to reach out to Microsoft Security on multiple occasions to report it as a false positive. And we found that the one thing that was tripping it up was one material design icon called coronavirus. We removed the constant for it in the code, compiled it, and it worked fine. Windows Defender
Wait,
stopped flagging it as
material
malware.
design. What? Wait.
Yeah,
Okay, I found it. Coronavirus icon material design. What? Okay, sure.
yeah. So it's a little glyph of like a coronavirus type thing, and it
Uh.
it was causing my game to be detected as malware. So this is stuff you have to deal with. False positives are a thing, and it is a nightmare. Because those antiviruses are not going to tell you what flagged them, because if they told you, you'd be able to circumvent it.
Right. It's
So
always fun when your
yeah.
own game gets flagged as a security issue.
Oh, it's great. It's great for PR. Biggest operating. I know Linux is trying to overtake Windows in terms of gaming market share, but realistically, Windows is still dominant. I don't know how long that'll be, but the year of the Linux desktop is not yet.
Not yet.
Um,
One day, maybe.
and I want Windows to at least work, even though I'm developing the game Linux first.
Mhm.
So if my game gets flagged by the default antivirus as malware, and I have to tell everybody to turn it off in order to play the game or to exclude their Steam direct, no.
Yeah.
First of all, no. Second of all, Valve does not allow that. If you
Mhm.
put malware, even if it's false positive on Steamworks, they're gonna bite you. So I had to get that fixed. That was a year-long nightmare, and it affected me across multiple game engines, which is just great.